In Creo Parametric, there is an outdated utility called AutobuildZ that helps you convert an imported drawing into a Creo Parametric part. Now, it's pretty limited in terms of what you're able to convert, but it's a good tool to have in your back pocket. First thing that you'll want to do is set a config.pro option to enable this functionality. If you go to File and then Options and Options, then you can click on Configuration Editor. The name of the configuration option is AutobuildZ_enabled. You want to set that to yes. And after you set it, you're going to have to restart Creo Parametric so that the functionality is available to you. Let me cancel out of here. The second thing that you'll want to do is make sure that you either know or set your working directory, because that is where your new file will be created. So I'm going to change over to a folder where I can locate my file. Let me click the OK button. So now I am ready to get started. Let me click on the Open button, and in my working directory, I'm going to change the filter from Creo Parametric files to all files. Here I have a DXF file, so you can use this with DXF files, DWGs, or any other kind of imported drawing. And so I will double click on this, and it will open up the Import New Model dialog box. It automatically selected drawing as what I want to create. Then it asked me for a file name. I'm just going to call this a wedge part because that's what it's going to look like. Let me click on the OK button, and then we get the Import DXF dialog box. I did a video on importing and exporting DXF. There are a bunch of different options in here. You can go with the defaults, and I have my system set up to turn off the generation of a log file. I find that to be pretty useless. So this is good. Let's click on the OK button. And now my drawing has been imported. It's a bit outdated. You can see that there are a bunch of entities that are hard to read because they are in yellow. In order to access the AutobuildZ functionality, I have a tab in drawing mode because I have that config.pro option. And let's just start from the left of the ribbon and go to the right. First, I will click on Preferences. And here we have the ability to set a name, or actually a prefix, to the names of layers generated by AutobuildZ. In a moment, I'm going to do some cleanup work in order to change the visibility of a bunch of the drawing details. And this will be the prefix to the layers that are generated. Then we have some options like setting up our first angle or third angle projection. There are some other different options in here for setting up the part to be generated, like using the same name as the drawing and using the drawing units. Then some interface options that you can set, and the tolerance. Everything in here looks good, so I'm just going to click OK out of the dialog box. And then in the process group, there are 3 other icons, and I'm pretty much just going to walk from the top on down. This will end up generating the part, and then I will just create a handful of features for this one. The first icon is for cleanup, to deal with all the different detail items that were imported, and we can filter by type, so we have dimensions, notes, and symbols. You can also select by entity color, and so these different entities will be recognized by Creo Parametric and then placed on a layer and hidden. And so you can choose preview, and a bunch of the entities went away. I'll click on the apply button in order to generate those different layers. I'm going to come back to this dialog box in a moment, but I'm going to close it and then go to my layers from the view tab, then choose layer tree. There are 3 different layers on here that were generated. ABZ, that's the prefix that I had set up in the AutobuildZ preferences. ABZ dim for dimensions, and then one for notes, and then one for symbols. And those dimensions were hard to read because they were in yellow. Well, you can click on the name of a layer and you can see a preview of the different entities. I'm going to right click on them and then choose select items to pick all the different entities on that layer. And now if I click on the Sketch tab, I can go to Text Style, and then I can change the color so that it's visible. Maybe I'll use this nice blue color, and then click OK and OK. And then let me close the layer tree and deselect. So there you can see all the different dimensions. They're now visible to you. And we have a few other entities in yellow that we need to clean up. There's an outline for a detailed view over on the side, and then there's hatching for this section view over in the middle. So to continue with cleaning up the drawing, let me go to the AutobuildZ tab and then go back to the cleanup dialog box. Now I'm going to change over to the manual tab, and I can choose to create a new layer. It also allows me to select from the existing layers that are in here. And I'm going to call this layer, let's call it ABZ_MISC. And then for the entities, one of the options that you have here is to select by the entity's color. Then I'll use the pick icon and I'll grab one of the lines from that cross-hatching. And I grabbed all the other different yellow entities and put them on that layer and then hid the layer. So that's good. Let me close out of there. And let me go back to the View tab and go to my layer tree because I'm going to need my dimensions in a moment. Let me show them once more and then close my layer tree. Now I can go back to the AutobuildZ tab and set up the different views from the imported drawing. When I click on View Setup, it's going to open up a dialog box, and right now we are on the Orthographic tab. The first thing I can do is establish the scale of the imported drawing. By default, it's using a value of 1. If you click on this button that looks like a box with 3 dots, that'll open up a dialog box that'll help you compute what the actual scale is. I can see that we have this 40 dimension going from the left side to the right side, so I can use the pick icon in order to select that dimension. And it says it's a linear dimension with a value of 40. And then I can use the pick icon to say what that is going from, and then this other pick icon for what it is going to. And by the way, I'm clicking on the pick icons manually. There was an option in the preferences to help auto advance once you select one thing. You might want to turn that on. And here it gives us the measured value of the distance and then computes the scale. So let's click the OK button out of the Calculate Scale dialog box. The dimensions are no longer visible. And now we can set up which of the different views in here correspond to our various different orthographic views. And so it gives you the standard 6 views up at the top. Here we have the front view. You can also configure if there's a top view, a right view, bottom view, back view, and left view. But the front view is selected. I can use the pick icon to select what is supposed to be in that front view. So let me zoom in a little bit. In the dialog box, you have 4 different ways of picking the entities. One is by using a rectangular marquee. Then there's another option where you can select the entities across a window. You can also chain the entities or just pick them one by one. I'm going to use the rectangular marquee. Then you can click on the plus sign in order to pick, and I'll left click one end of the rectangle and then left click the other end of the rectangle. In this case, it grabbed 22 different entities. That's good. I will click the close button. And now you can see that there is a dashed box around those imported entities, and it says this is the front view, and it's showing a little XYZ in there as well. All right, let me zoom out and then go to this view. This would correspond to the top view. So I'll change the button here to top view. And then let's use the pick icon to define the view. I'll use a rectangular marquee like before. Let's use the plus sign, and I'll left click one end and then left click the other end. This time it got 42 entities. That's good. I will click the close button. And now we have the top view set up. One last view to set up, and it's going to be the right view. So let me click on the corresponding button for that, and then use the pick icon, and then hit the plus sign, and left click one side, left click the other side. I've got all those different entities. Let's close out of there. So I've set up 3 of the different views, and you can see them highlighted on the computer screen. Now, in this particular drawing, I've got some other additional views. So for example, we have a detail view, and this was a section view, and this is an auxiliary view. If you want to, you can set up those different kinds of views. So for example, on the section tab, we could create a new view, and I could select the different entities corresponding to that. Same thing for the auxiliary view and the detail view. You basically walk through these tabs from top to bottom in order to set that up. But for this demo, that is good for me to create some basic geometry. So I'll close out of the view setup. Now I'll go to the next button in the list, the next tool in the process group. That is the part setup. Here in this dialog box, we can change the name if we want to. Here it is set to use drawing units. You can fill in the values of parameters for description and modeled by, and this will set it as the active part model. So when I create features, they will go into that part model. So that's good. I will click the OK button, and the new part is started out, and I can start making features in that part. If you take a look in the features group, there's not too much in here. Yeah, there are 3 different kinds of datum features that you can create, but you can only create protrusions, revolves, and straight holes. So this utility only works on really basic prismatic geometry. At least it gives you a starting point for some stuff. So let's start off by making a protrusion, and then we get our extrude feature dialog box. Let me zoom into the entities here. For the name of this feature, you don't have to fill in a name. It'll give it a default name if you don't, but I'm just going to call this extrude 1. And then underneath the area here where it says type, it's a protrusion. You cannot remove material, as this is the very first solid feature that'll be generated in the part. So now I will click on the next button, and it wants us to select the entities that would go into the section or the sketch for extrude 1. So I will use the pick icon, and it opens up the selection dialog box. By default, it's going to chain entities, but you also have the ability to do rectangular marquee like before, or across a window, or pick the entities one by one. I will use the plus sign, and I'm being prompted to select one item, so I'll select this line, and then it automatically grabbed the loop there, and that's what I want to use. So I will click the close button. Note that 5 entities were selected. And so now we've got the first section. The section profile validation was successful. If it wasn't, you could use the first aid kit to try to fix it. Then I will click on the next button, and it wants us to pick a sketch plane. I'll use the pick icon, and the sketch plane would correspond to this horizontal line in the top view. When I pick that, here it has it selected from that top view, and it recognizes that this can be the datum plane called front for the first view. That's good. Let me click on the next button. And now we need to know our depth reference. And that would be this line over here. And let me use the pick icon in order to get that line over there. And so it said, okay, this would be a blind depth corresponding to 19.9999999. Hey, that really should be a 20. It's just a scaling factor based on the view scale. So anyhow, we have the the depth manually set there. There's a drop-down list if you want to change it to something else. And I can click on the preview button, and that'll open up the feature that will be generated in its own separate window. I'm going to turn on my datum plane display just so you can see that the sketch was placed on the datum plane called front. So everything is good for that first extrude feature. Let me click on the OK button. And so the first feature in the part was created. The preview goes away. And now for the next feature, I want to create this cut from the top view. So once again, I'll click on the protrusion command. And for the name of the feature, I'll just call this extrude 2. And here we have the button that allows this to be a cut. And if I click on it, it says, hey, this is going to be a cut with side 1 depth, and you have the little toggle for changing the direction of the feature, but this is good for step 1. Let me click on the next button. And for the section profile, well, let me zoom in over here. I'll use the pick icon, and right now it wants to chain the different entities. So let me use the chain option, and I will pick this line, and let me use the plus sign, and then I can choose that same line again, and it grabbed 5 different entities. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Let me then use the plus sign in order to grab another different entity, and then I've got way too much stuff here. Yeah, this selection is weird. Even I'm struggling with this. Let me use the minus sign in order to remove, say, that entity, and that entity. And I've got 7 entities. I don't know, let me try closing this. Yeah, it was successful. I got the right number of entities in there. Yeah, it's outdated. Let me hit the next button. And then for the sketch plane, I'll use the pick icon, and let me go to this entity from the top view. Let me use the next button. For the depth reference, I'll use the pick icon, and this cut should go down to here. And I'll click on the preview. We can see how that cut would end up being generated in the model. Yeah, I can see a preview. I got way too many entities, but that's okay. That's one of the nice things about AutobuildZ. It's a little forgiving in terms of entities forming a loop that you want to create these features from. So I will click the OK button, and that is good for the second feature. The last feature I'm going to show you is creating a hole in the part. So let's go to the straight hole. I'm going to call this one hole_1. And we only have the option for doing a simple hole. Let me use the next button. For the hole profile, I'm just going to zoom in and just select that circle from the imported drawing. Then use the next button. For the sketch plane, let me go to the bottom view, and that hole should start from this entity corresponding to the sketch plane. And then use the next button. For the depth reference, I will use that particular line, and it computes the depth of the hole. Let's go to the preview option, and I'll zoom around once more, and you can see that we have the preview of the hole being generated in there. So that's good. Let's click the OK button. And I'm going to repeat that process for the next 3 holes. I'm just going to go through this very quickly, and I'm going to speed up the video. All right, so I made the other 3 holes. That is good. Let me click on the OK button. And so now that I have generated everything in here, I'm going to click on the Save button. Saving the drawing will also end up saving the part file in this particular folder. I will click on the OK button. And now let's go to the Open icon. And here we have the part that was generated. Let me open it. And there you can see I have my Creo Parametric part model that was generated from that imported drawing. So there you can get a flavor of AutobuildZ and how you could use it in certain situations if this is useful to you.